Welcome to Guy Talk. Today we have Mike Dinesman with Project Dynamo and other different groups that he's working with. But I want to give you a welcoming, Mike. Thanks for being on the show with us.
Thanks for the invite.
Oh, man. It's been a while since we talked, and good to hook up with you again, buddy. Let me do a little introduction for you before I turn it over to you to give everybody else the pleasure of knowing your background. Mike started his career in Special Forces as a medic and communications sergeant. And then he got wise and went over to the dark side and became an officer. And there's other ones in this room right now that did the same thing. So you're amongst friends there. Not with me, but with them. And became an intel officer, got commissioned in 95. Was the team leader for the intel officer, for an intel officer at AT Force Protection for AT Force Protection in Egypt. He was an SF Battalion intelligence officer for 3rd Battalion Special Forces Group, 3rd Special Forces Group military team leader to Columbian Army, Chief Collection and Production Officer for Rapid Deployment Corporation in Valencia, Spain. And Mike is also the driving Project Dynamo, which is a hostage rescue group. You guys.
I'm sorry. I just want to correct. So we rescue Americans that are in danger anywhere across the world. So to say hostage, that's probably not what we do. We probably don't do any of that. That's more of a law enforcement military role.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Just to get that out correct, right?
So, yeah, very good. So tell us more about that. And obviously I need to know too.
Okay, so where to start? So I guess I can do like a 60-second resume, and then we can steer off of that. So I started out enlisting in the old 12 Special Forces group, which doesn't exist anymore. And I went through the Special Forces communication sergeant course, and that was in the old days when we did Morse code and bounced radio waves off the ionosphere out of 2 wires, basically sticking out of the side of a rucksack. Planning range for comms about 2,000 miles, which is pretty unique and very more art than science than it is now. Just you point the satellite dish and then comms work, right? So back then, that wasn't a guarantee, right? We actually had to do the work to make that communication work, and we'd find out long afterwards that the comms worked. And then I went to the medic course in 1990, and that coincided with the Gulf War and the invasion of Kuwait, and so everybody got all excited about that. And then I was supposed to be one of the medics for Task Force Ranger. I had Arabic language school under my belt. Just had graduated in January of that year, December of 92. And ready to go 93. And I just changed my mind and went back to college, got off active duty. And then after Somalia, and then another situation that I don't want to talk about on because it's controversial, but there's an SF team that was a place it wasn't supposed to be and got a bunch of people in trouble, one of whom was a really good friend of mine. The reason I got my commission was I wasn't trying to save the whole globe or save everybody, but I felt like I was always the solution to a problem. As an NCO in Special Forces, we're told to solve problems, and if you're not solving the problem, you're part of the problem. And so I felt like, if I was an 18 Alpha, maybe for 18 months, 2 years, I could positively contribute to an SF team in a way that who and if you think about it. Who would not like to have a captain team leader who could be a medic and a commo guy, at the drop of a hat, right? It gives your team, a little extra oomph and a little extra capability in ways that, be nice to have and comfortable to have. And I got injured. My right ankle kind of exploded, 4 torn ligaments. It turned out I had 2 avulsion fractures. And I got it surgerized, and And it didn't really come back. I lost a third of the range of motion in my foot. And the Army made me an intel guy, basically a couple of weeks before 9/11. And that's when we all started getting deployed. So I spent a year in Egypt, where I worked as basically a brigade S2 for the brigade that's in Sinai. It's a multinational force. And then I PCSed to 3rd Battalion, 3rd Group, where we did OIF 1, the invasion of Iraq, and then came back for a few weeks. Literally, it was only just a few weeks, and then deployed to Afghanistan. And then when that deployment was over, I took command at Fort Bliss. And then after whatever was 18 months or 19 months, I went to Colombia as a military advisor. First, as the intel advisor to Joint Task Force Omega, which basically had 15 maneuver brigades in the field at any given time. And then I became the team leader at 4th Infantry Division, the Columbian Military Division. Then I went to the first intel job I actually really ever had. That was at the NATO Rapid Deployment Corp headquarters in Spain. Great job, great people. Then I went to CGSC my last 2 years. I worked at Army North, where we did theater security cooperation missions in Mexico with the Mexican Army. And that was a really awesome mission too.
So what did you do with the Mexican Army?
We did a lot of intel training. We built a 5.5-month long intel training program, modular in concept. And I was helped running it. I helped put it together, design it, and put it together with my friend Johnny Cook, actually an amazing guy and also an SF medic. And he and I put that program together, and it went so well that the Mexican Navy asked that it be taught to them. That the Army guys were so happy with it. I still get messages from some of the students that we taught, and that was in 2012. So, 13 years later, I still get messages from those guys and still friends with a lot of them.
You developed some kind of relationships with them, some good relationships that they're still.
Oh yeah, it's all positive. Yeah.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So, when you were building these courses with to deal with intelligence, would it have anything to do with maybe the dealing with the cartels, collecting information on that, or is it just standard military type of courses for intelligence collection and processing?
So it was actually, if you looked at it or thought about it, picture. So there's a lot of countries in the world that do not have an intelligence branch, like a professionalized branch that is intelligence. So they just take a guy and like, hey, you're going to be the intel officer, and so they get whatever a course, and then they just they get put in. They're an intel guy for one rotation, two rotations, basically 2 years, a year, and then they're rotated out. So they don't have any corporate knowledge of a type, to say it that way. And we designed this so that you could take somebody who knew nothing about intelligence and basically create an intelligence officer or a senior intelligence NCO, and then have a place to begin, right? So we definitely increased the capacity and the capability so much that it was required for the commanders of the units that those soldiers were going to go to come to the final practical exercise, so they would even understand what capability these guys had, because it was literally it wasn't like a 1 or a 2 step forward. It was an exponential growth cycle in how they did intelligence. So we taught them IPB. We built kits for them, like, okay, this is what goes in intel kit. This is how you do tactical site exploitation. This is what counter narcotics analysis looks like. This is how you track money. This is how you collect evidence on a site or on a scene. This is how you conduct a different type of humans, and they're great at human. Like I can say that the Mexican Army was fantastic, very highly motivated, very very disciplined. Like, their soldiers roam around all day long with a full load of basic ammunition and hand grenades. and they don't have accidental discharges, and they don't have any issues with that. I mean, they're
Well,
really great.
well, there are no accidentals. There's just negligent, right?
Negligent, right? So correct, yeah.
Right.
But we never saw anybody have any issues with mishandling firearms or anything. And I remember particularly, they have an amazingly sound and strong humanitarian relief package because of the earthquakes and everything in Mexico City and elsewhere in the country, from hurricanes to everything. And we would watch them have these rehearsals, and all of a sudden, all these trucks and all these people would show up, a no notice drill. And I was super impressed.
Mike, when you say you built these kits, are you talking like templates for them to
Oh
conduct?
no, like everything from give me a second. So from protractors for map reading
Oh, okay.
to like fingerprint kits to Ziploc bags and the bags that you would use to collect evidence. Um and then like all the mapping stuff, right? So some of the things that we take for granted, we have whole groups of NCOs, right? So when it comes time to battle track, right? So there's lots of different ways to battle track, but if you're watching the battle and something's happening, there's one way where, yeah, you're on a map, you like put an icon. The old days, like I put an icon in a spot, and then I put a number next to it, and then on a separate, part of the board, I put the event that took place and the time, all the way down to that level of granularity. Like, okay, this is how your boss can walk in and see everything that he needs to see in 30 seconds instead of you trying to explain it.
Right. Huh. So how did you come about this contract? Was it with the Army or was it with
No, I was still a green suitor. I was assigned to Army North, and it probably took Johnny Cook 2 years to convince everybody that it was okay to do it. It was expensive, and it took a lot of resources. So we put out taskers, and we had we changed out instructors every week for 5 months. So
huh.
people prepared, and we had simultaneous translation. If most everybody needed that. My Spanish was good enough where I could just pitch, and it was fine. But everything from explaining to people how to get to Mexico and how to navigate through the airport and get through customs and picking them up, and then doing integration, all the meetings. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what your week's going to look like. And then doing hot washes every day after work, and then doing mission prep the morning of, and then getting them to the airport, and then swapping out. Like, okay, so I'm responsible for these guys, and then we had somebody else responsible for the next, so that you could follow through. And it was complex but doable, and it went so well that the Navy wanted it too. The
When you
Mexican
said
Navy.
when you were swapping people out, were they coming in with different skill sets to
Yeah.
yeah, it's like one guy would come in and do fingerprinting, one guy would come in and do map reading type stuff, or
So I would say more like we got a guy from NSA who taught counter narcotics analysis, and then we got tactical site exploitation people, and then we got media and document exploitation. Like, what do you do with a cell phone? What do you do with a hard drive? Um, and those go together if you think about that. So it all kind of went together, like targeting. Okay, so we got through the basic part. This is what an intel officer said. This is what an intel officer does. This is kind of the description, and then just step by step, how do I go all the way through and build this capability? So like from targeting, you go into, so first, I'm sorry, backing up, it's been a while since I looked at the whole POI. So you start with intel cycle and intel process, how you build an RFI from a requirement based upon the plan, right? Because that's where it all begins, is as you're doing IPB and how that all fits together, and then the synergy of how the RFI, the gaps in intelligence, get identified and then put in the process, and then collected against, and then recollected, and then confirmed, and what's the difference between a fact and an assumption, and how do you use those, and all the way through step by step. Then all the targeting. So targeting, we're going to go hit a target. So how do you do close target reconnaissance? How do you do surveillance? How do you set up all the processes? And then how do you hit? What happens when you hit the target? Well, they don't need any help hitting a target. They know how to do that. But afterwards, how do you collect?
How do you assess it?
Yeah, how do you collect on site, protect the integrity of evidence, and then what do I do now? Well, I collect information based upon pocket litter and all the stuff I find on site through telephones and media, and I'm going to go try to hit 2 or 3 more targets. Since I'm already here and I'm already in the field and I already got that
before they get the word, right?
Yeah, and then push out. All the way through. All of the different aspects. It was a great course.
How long does this course? I mean, it's some of the stuff.
5.5 months.
5.5 months they went through this. Wow.
Yeah.
From start to finish. That's really great stuff.
Yeah. It was in a way, it was a lot like mixing an officer basic course and aspects of an officer advanced course together in a foreign language.
Now, were you teaching this to foreign officers or to enlisted?
I believe there were a few enlisted guys, but they made them all officers on paper, so that, and then we had a bunch of their SF guys, and then some of their tier 1 guys. It's a great experience.
Yeah, sure does sound like it. So, how long have you been out of the military now?
So I retired in 2012, so 13 years. Doesn't seem like it.
And what has filled your time since then?
So I was in charge of 2 programs in Afghanistan, Constant Hawk and TACOP. So it was basically collection and surveillance and some other stuff. And then I came back and I tried real estate for a year, didn't like it too much. And I took a job in the Middle East with a partner nation of our country, and helped build curriculum for their Command and General Staff College. And I'd already at that point I'd lived in the Middle East or Afghanistan, right? So I think I'd been on the ground 4 years, and that took me to 7.5, almost 8 years of living in countries in the Middle East.
And I guess this is with that conversation we had the other day, and you said that now that you're home, you realize you're a good father.
Yeah. Well, I'm a lot different. I'm a lot different now than I was prior.
Yeah.
I'm a lot more geared towards interacting with people in a positive way than talking to everybody like we're all on the same ODA, right? Or we're on the same team, whatever team you want to call that. That took some growth, and I should put out now. So a couple of things. First, Project Dynamo survives on donations, and so when people donate to us today, that's how we protect people tomorrow. That's how we get the ability to go forward and rescue people. And the Coming Home Project and Coast to Coast Foundation, those 2 groups really gave me kind of a new outlook on life, and you can look those 2 groups up, and highest praise for those guys.
Yeah, I was just had another conversation with the head of Warriors Haven USA, and the same type of desire to give back, same desire to make it a better world. Need a lot more people like you guys. But
thank you. We're all one team.
Yeah, I thank you actually. What I wanted to lead into that was the Project Dynamo, and I want people to know about it. I know a little bit about it, but I'd like for you to get other people the knowledge of it, so maybe they could help you.
Sure. So Project Dynamo is listed as a 501c3. It's a charitable organization made up of a bunch of volunteers. There's basically a core of 3 to 4 of us who work every day. And we focus on rescuing or helping Americans out of danger. So Project Dynamo began as Afghanistan was coming apart, and I believe I was at the forward-leaning edge early. One of the few people who started connecting as Afghanistan came apart. A guy that I refer to as Afghanistan John, my very best friend, a very best friend in the world. He decided he was going to leave. So he'd been there, I think, 13 years on the ground, and former SF guy, and had a very successful company there. And he decided it was time to go. And so as soon as he said it was time to go, I immediately started trying to figure out how I was going to get him out, because the embassy had already collapsed. There were no more assets on the ground. So what was I going to do? How was I going to get him out? And so I just started connecting to everybody. My friend Rob was a great connection. He and his now wife Tay worked at JSOC, and so I started connecting through them. My lifelong friend, basically, Jim Gant. And I just add this: there'll be people who want to talk bad about Jim Gant, and they're all people who never met him and never worked with him. And I've known Jim Gant since we were both staff sergeants, and so I'm pretty comfortable with holding that position. I love Jim Gant as well as I could love anybody on the face of the earth. But I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, we're going to get Afghanistan John out. We're going to get him out. And anything that you can do to contribute, help, connect, whatever. We got to figure this out." And then he is good friends with Scott Mann, and so basically we found out we were all kind of working at the same time. Scott Mann, Pineapple Express guy, amazing dude, tremendous depth of experience. We were all working this problem at the same time. And I connected to some friends of mine and John, Afghanistan John's, that were South African. And we got a lot of work done with them and through them. But basically, 15 August, whatever time in the middle of the night I started doing this, on the 18th was when we pushed forward. So 3 days later, I'd helped put together PID packets for 209 people and pushed out 2 buses and 4 trucks to Kaya, to the airport, to get them onto the airfield and through into safety. So 3 days, not a bad.
In 3 days, you were in the United States, and you got.
No, I was working through the United States. I never left.
In the United States. Were you in the United States, or were you there?
No, I was here. There was no way to get into Afghanistan, really, because they're not taking any flights at that point, right? Everything had shut down, so they were just working charter flights out of the airport, and so there was really no getting in, unless you want to do cross border operations. But as a dad, I had 2 kids. I mean, I could, at that point, I didn't have the whole plan together for how I leave at the drop of a hat. But it was still a pretty good feat of magic to, in 3 days, figure out the PID process, coordinate and identify all the steps to get them through into the airfield, and then get them there. And I remember on the 17th, or maybe it was the 18th, probably early in the morning on the 18th. So that night on the 18th was when they pushed out. I remember building the route and call outs from the compound to get to the airport. And I thought, and that's when it dawned on me just how screwed up things were.
Yeah.
There's no help. We have zero support. And I'm building a route in my kitchen in the United States to push to the other side of the globe to help my best friend get to safety.
Now, were all these people you helped, were they all American citizens?
No, almost all of them were Afghans or allies. We helped a lot of Americans get out shortly after. I'll explain. So this is how screwed up things were. Even though the people on the inside of the airfield had manifested, these 209 people, and even though they already had the complete PID packets, as soon as he got there at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, the people on the outside, the Army guys from the 82nd, refused to let them in because they themselves did not know the process for how to do it. So the guys on the outside said, "Okay, if you got a CAT card," he said, to my friend Afghanistan John, "if you got a CAT card, you can come in, but none of these other people can. We don't have authority, and we don't have nobody's told us that we can let them in." And so he's out there, from basically 2 o'clock in the morning until dawn, when all the Afghans start showing up, because they're not going to hang out there in the middle of the night. At that point, I think maybe some of them were, but so that was the 19th, the morning of the 19th, and I remember I'm listening to him, and then he gets into a gunfight, and basically in front of the airport, and he's screaming over the satellite phone, and kind of like similar to being in the talk when there's a tick, except it's your best friend, and except there's women and children and little kids involved. And I just as soon never have to do that ever again.
Yeah.
So he disappeared for 3 days. We lost him for 3 days. And I got a good friend of mine who's a former NSA guy who did his special bit of magic. And 3 days later, he identified, hey, I got a ping on the IMEI number off of his cell phone. And you should look for him in this general location. And we found him. And he came up for air, and there's a lot of excitement, as a way to say it. And basically, until the very last day, he and I were pushing as many people as we could out through HKIA. After that, they'd got the solution, and I really learned a lot that I used with Dynamo that I learned from my South African friends. Stefan Nedkoff, I always talk about him. Amazing dude. He and his team, just I'm not aware of any other organization or group who was already moving people in. These guys were moving basically 4 buses a day into HKIA because they had already
their special skills. I mean, the South
because
Africans,
they knew it was going to happen, and they planned for it, and they'd rehearsed it. And so while everybody else was trying to figure out which one is Abbey Gate, they just flicked the switch and they were off. They were running.
and how do they have that special sauce and we didn't to know that was going to happen? I mean, you got to ask those questions in hindsight, and it's always pointy, of course.
So when and it goes to some of the planning stuff, and remember we learned PACE, so primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. So I think maybe PACE was always this. If not, I guess I redefined it. But primary and alternate, those are I have one route that gets me to a destination, and alternate is I just take a different route, but I still get to the same destination, right? So that means if my end state is one thing, it doesn't change. I just have different ways to get there between primary and alternate. But contingency for me now means I look and do a risk analysis and a threat assessment, and every single thing that I can anticipate, I'm going to structure time, people, and resources, and I'm going to structure those in time and space against what those threats and risks are based upon either conditions or time, right? There's 2 ways to plan. I'm waiting for conditions to be set, or I'm waiting for a calendar date. And so that's what I watch them do. And so contingencies mean in the plan I already have, when things don't go well, what do I do about it? And that's definitely a refinement of a process that I think many of us talked about, but didn't really actually fully integrate into like a way of life, right? And then the emergency, when everything goes to crap, now what do I do, right? And so on the night of the early morning of the 19th, we got to exercise, the oh crap plan, which we didn't do very well on, even though I tried to build primary and alternate. So the South African guys, they'd already rehearsed how they're going to evacuate people. Like they'd already rehearsed it.
And I got to tell you, this is news to me. I had no idea that the South Africans played that big of a part in it. So this is
they were incredible. Yeah, no, there's and it was funny because we even joke about it because there were organizations that claim credit for their actions, and when they were talking to Steph in meetings and briefings, they're taking credit for the things that he did, not knowing that he was the one who did it. Yeah,
that was probably awkward.
Yeah, he's a gentleman, so I don't think he punked him out. I sure would have, but I don't think he did because that's just the kind of guy Stefan is. And so basically, I was in about 30 different groups. Organizing, helping, contributing. I remember we did at least 2 clandestine runways west of Kandahar, and got some people out from there that were special assets. Which that's about all I'm going to say on that subject.
Right.
I remember when the highest priority tasking came down. So we're told, you can't go out the wire. The guys can't do this. They can't do that, until it was time to get the interpreter that interpreted for then the president of the United States. And then everything had to stop and go find that guy. Tasking came directly through the Joint Chiefs to go do that. And I would add, I've never met the former chairman. And lots of people talk bad about him. And I'm not here to defend or anything about what happened during that withdrawal. I don't want to talk about anything else that he's done. But I would say there's a gross miscalculation of the quality of a human being, the quality of an officer, that guy. Because I know he was behind the scenes doing stuff, and that I was interacting with him and with the people on his team. And I'll defend that to my last breath. That sometimes you gotta stand there. Sometimes as an officer, you have to stand there and take the bullets from both sides. Right. All the while you're doing what that you can do within the within the realm of what you're capable of doing, and still get the job done. Because if you get relieved, what did you accomplish by getting relieved?
Right.
And then there was the guy, I talk about this guy fairly often, the guy from the 82nd, who was in charge of things at the airfield, and he deserves this. He deserves this story. So I remember some very specific. There were 4 buses that got in through the airfield, and when he found out, he turned them around and pushed them off of the airfield. So they were in safety, and he turned the 4 buses and pushed them into the hands of the Taliban. So 2 of those buses were Kandak, and you could say lots of different things. And I basically say this the same way: it's your country. You should be out there fighting for it. And however you want to interpret that is however you want to interpret that. But he also pushed out a bus that came from an orphanage and a bus that came from a girls' school. And I think we can all have a mental image of what the Taliban is going to do with a bus full of girls. And I don't care, in that case, I don't care what my orders are. There's a way for you to hide the violation of that type of order. And he didn't. And I used to think and believe that officers would not do or would not take actions that would violate moral and ethical guidelines that we have. There are some orders which you don't obey. And I'm not talking about disobeying an order much to the popular theme at the moment from the legislative branch. This is people on the ground, who have the ability to protect children and chose not to. And there's no moral or ethical ground to stand on for that.
Was he, not to play 20 questions or anything, but trying to understand who this guy was. Was he an older guy? Was he a younger guy?
He was the commander on the ground. He was the.
So he was
in a way, you could say he was the Joint Force Commander.
He was a field officer.
He's a general officer now, still serving.
Okay. Well,
so
I don't know what the history is.
Yeah. So he gets to answer for that one day.
Yeah.
In a spot and place that not for me to judge, right?
Right.
So out of all of that, out of all those 30 plus, 25, 30 plus, whatever it was, because I really don't remember now, all the different groups, one of those groups evolved into Project Dynamo, and I'd been a volunteer with Dynamo all the way through. I remember I was actually in Israel with family when the Russians invaded Ukraine, and I basically, for almost a day, put my trip on hold as we started to put together capability to help Americans evacuate out of Ukraine. I was at an SF reunion when we did that for Sudan, and Jay Magoni, a good friend of mine, he pitched in, former SF guy, uh, medic also. It's strange how medics keep popping up in all of this, right? Um, and Jay's an awesome guy, great SF guy, just great guy all the way around. And so he helped with that, and we all pitched in, and basically I just volunteered every single time, all the way through connecting people. We got an SF guy's sister out of Haiti a couple years ago when that was happening, and then summer year before last, so summer 2024, the board asked me if I would consider becoming director of operations, and I thought, wow, that's amazing. I would love to do that. And so after assuming that position, I basically put together a conceptual plan, much like my South African friends had done, Steph Nedkoff. And so we identified these are the types of situations that Dynamo could be faced with, natural disasters in the U.S. and overseas, and then country instability for whatever reason. Doesn't have to be political, it could be war, it could be anything, but instability within a country that could cause us to go. And so we looked at the map and we talked through it, and we recognized after the October attacks in Israel that was likely going to be a repetitive issue because that conflict has not ended. And out of all the places that we've gone, Ukraine and Israel were two places where we could foresee that happening. And so we went to Israel and we formed a plan. And I built a plan that could move at least 1,000 Americans a week out of Israel, and that goes all the way through, the going and getting them or receiving them, staging them, having a safe place to put them until transportation is set up, where they can they have all the things for life support like food and lodging and a safe place, and for whole families, children and adults and elderly, and all of that. And we exercised it over the summer. So I got to build a plan and then execute it. It was great.
Well, where were you? Where were these refugees? They were Americans, right? Most of them, or all of them?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay,
I don't know that we ever looked at them as refugees. We looked at them as Americans who couldn't flow
yeah,
because,
they were American
yeah.
citizens, but they're
And
not
then,
refugees.
so
You were
there's one of the things that Dynamo does. So if we're getting ones and twos out, we really won't do anything but Americans. But when we're doing mass evacuations, we don't care. So we'll take everybody. And so the objective of Dynamo is we'll take you from a place that's where you're not safe, and we'll take you to a safe and secure location.
so they don't necessarily come back to the United States automatically. They'll go
So
wherever.
we get them to the first safe and secure location, and then they're responsible for their onward travel. And if somebody donates a plane, well, then we take where they go wherever the plane goes, and then they manage their transportation after that.
But Americans, you'll probably get them back. But the
Uh,
rest of them,
it's all dependent. It really is all dependent. And because of the donations, right? And
right? The
so
funding,
yeah,
right?
so I'd love nothing more than
To repay,
to get them all the way to their front door, and
right?
but it goes to how many more people can I help
Right.
with the funding that we have versus basically you know uh, a service where we get people door to door. And I'd love nothing more to do that also, but one, it's not realistic, and two, I don't think anybody has that kind of funding stream to perform that type of
Right.
situation.
It's quite a feat to do that. And the reason I was asking that, Mike, is because the within the was last summer, I guess, where that one uh, Afghanistan guy shot those two National Guard guys.
Yes.
And so I was thinking, like, what are we doing? What are you doing to prevent stuff like that from happening without getting people, right into the United States, without getting them vetted somewhat, not
Yeah.
that,
So we
not that
don't
millions of them have walked across the border.
Yeah, we don't circumvent any of those legal aspects. We're not. We won't do that. And one, it's you can still get someone to safety without doing that, right? We
Right.
can get them to a place that's safe and secure without doing that. But we can't violate any of the national laws of the United States to do any of those things.
Well, but for a period there of time, and this isn't getting political, this is fact. For a period of time, uh, they were refused to enforce those laws or allowing people just to come in, which is part of the problem we're dealing with today.
Correct.
But
But
as a private organization like yours, you want to. What are you doing to prevent stuff like that from happening? And I think you just answered that. You get them to
yeah,
a
safe and
safe
secure.
spot, and then
Yeah,
say, hey, best of luck. I got you here.
we set them up for success. It's not like we
Right.
say, okay, we're just going to drop you off at the airport. We'll see you, and then they went from and so Israel's a great example. So they needed to get out. Lots of people needed to get out, medical reasons, whatever.
Uh-huh.
But if we picked them up and collected them up and then just dropped them at an airport in Jordan, we didn't help them any because they
Right.
came from one place where they had life support, and then we took them to a place where they didn't have any. So therein is the juggle, right? Some organizations apparently were doing that. But we did more of an approach like, okay, here's what we can do to help you. Here's how we can connect you to getting flights. And when you have those flights, then we can move you and we'll stage you and then move you to your airport within 12 hours of your departure. And that way, that you're set. And that if you choose, like if you got 12 or 18 hours, if you choose to stay at a hotel, we'll get you to that hotel and make sure that you have transportation from the hotel to the airport and make sure that it's a turnkey, right? So that everything's set. But that that focuses on making sure that they go from a location where they at least have life support to another place where they have life support instead of
Right.
just dumping them off on the street.
Right. And how many? Just a guesstimate. How many people do you think you moved out so far, out of harm's way?
So I'm sorry, I keep messing with this. So total number is a little more than 7,500 people in 4.5 years, which I think is a pretty respectable number.
Yeah.
And that number is accurate. We're not inflating it or
Right.
inventing new numbers, right? I want to say Israel was a little under 300 people in a week that we moved, which again, pretty respectable number. We exercised almost all aspects of the plan that we wrote. There's only one line of effort that we were unable to because the maritime solution became financially unviable. It was too expensive because of insurance costs for the carriers. And there's a lot of people who have questions about that. That's because just about all the ports where the naval vessels would land were all within the cone of the GPS guided surface-to-surface missiles that were in the hands of Hezbollah, and so those were all out. That's outside of my control. I can't control what an insurance company is going to do to a carrier, right?
I think I think they found out recently that those same surface-to-surface, those CM90s were down in off of Margarita Island and off of Venezuela. I think they were the same ones.
Yeah, possibly. And so I mean, the Hezbollah has targeted Israeli naval vessels with those and destroyed them. So that all plays into into the maritime plan. But we had a maritime plan, and no missiles were fired. But that doesn't alter how an insurance company measures risks, right?
Right. Well, it's an area denial, and they know that. They build that into their equation as well.
Absolutely.
And I think those things have like 55-mile range on them.
Yeah, they work. They do.
Yeah, they'll get out there a little bit. I'm sure they would give the Navy a problem too. I'm sure if they got close enough.
Agreed.
The aircraft didn't get to them first. What's the future for Dynamo? What do you see coming up here in the near future for them?
So we do have an Endeavor, a very special forces type of mission. And one of the things I'd like to add is we Dynamo, really the core is made up of actual special operations people, mostly Green Berets, mostly because that's where I came from, right? So I had a bunch of people who so these words and terminology, I'm gonna explain it. So former SIF guys, so commanders in extremis force, they're kind of like a Delta Force capable unit. They're not Delta Force, they're not, but they have a similar capability. They have similar equipment, and they train similar missions. Difference being is those Green Beret units that are SIF, they're forward deployed. So they could be in Asia, they could be in in Latin America, they could be in Europe, so that they can react within a very, very short amount of time, and don't have to deploy from halfway up from one side of the globe. And I have a tremendous number of volunteers from that force. In the Rolodex, basically, is volunteers for Dynamo. So I want to say I have over 100 guys now who we have that'll, and most of them, not most of them, I'd say at least 50% are former SIF guys. And I don't have a lot of SEALs, so if you're a SEAL and you wanna reach out, please do.
Well, there's other guys in this room that might.
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah, I'd love that. And the importance of that really is, if you have a force, some people go on vacation, some people have family obligations, and like, well, I can't go this trip. It's not like before, we're like, oh, we're going, sure. And so, in Jamaica, we had a bunch of guys. We just got back from Jamaica. We did a great mission in Jamaica. I want to say we brought in more than 75,000 pounds of humanitarian aid. So we're doing all kinds of stuff. We do have the Archangel Initiative, which is counter child and human trafficking. Very classic Green Beret mission, to say it. Not going to get into details, but the idea isn't to put together teams and go try to rescue 25 kids a year. The idea is to put together teams and help others rescue 300 to 500 kids a year. So force multiplier package, right?
Yeah.
A very uniquely Green Beret type of mission. And I'd love to have support. And anybody who wants to support us with that. We have a lot of Americans, individual donors. And one of the things I think we lack are corporate donors who want to have an effect. You won't find too many other organizations that have not just the capability of going rescuing people, because there's lots of those organizations, but we have the type of planning capability, and we have the mentorship. We had an addition of a real hero of mine. General Edward Reeder joined our board, and he's a tremendous sounding board. And there's very few people who have the depth that General Reeder does within the operational environment. And when I was writing my master's, General Reeder gave me on the Thursday night of a 4-day weekend, General Reeder spent 3.5 hours with me, talking to me about my thesis that I was writing, that he allowed me to interview him on. Just who does that? Right. Just totally committed, just a consummate professional, amazing guy.
That might go two ways there, Mike. It's
I try to stay humble,
Well, and let me blow the horn for you for a minute or two there. But I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you everything you're doing, and I wish you much success. And I got a couple of stories for you I'd like to tell you offline. We'll
sure.
Call and talk about that. All right.
Sounds great. So last opportunity. Please go to our website, projectdynamo.net, and your donations today ensure that we can help rescue people who could be your family next week. So we've done rescues in in Burnsville in North Carolina after the hurricane blew through Asheville area, where we went in on horseback. We had horseback teams that went in. One of the few groups that did that. Yeah, no, we've done some tremendous, very insightful, tremendous operations. We're at Milton. We're in Haiti and Jamaica. Like we're almost everything. We were also helping out in Kerrville in Texas. So yeah, I got back from Israel, and 3 days later I was in Kerrville.
Huh. Interesting.
Yep.
All right, Mike. Thanks
so much
for everything you've done, and thanks for coming on the show and telling us about it. Best of luck. And by the way, I was gonna say my last comment was gonna be, tell us how we can help you, but you did that yourself. Thanks.
Yes, sir. All right.
Thanks, buddy. Bye now.